Yo, party people. Okay, March 10th, number 2. Okay, so we're almost done with chapter 14. I have 2 verses left. All right, so for those of you that didn't see the first video and have not seen any of my videos, let me show you on a quick map where Hosea is, because we're in Hosea chapter 14, the last chapter in Hosea. So this is the timeline of Israel. This is Hosea. He's right here. So this is the fall of the northern kingdom to the kingdom of Assyria. That's what differentiate the colors here. This is the northern kingdom. These guys are usurpers. They were not supposed to break away and make their own kingdom, but they did under the son of Solomon. His name was Rehoboam. These guys are the legitimate rulers. These guys have their own troubles down here. But these guys are always a mess, and so these guys, the southern kingdom falls to the Babylon right here, and that's where we see the story of Daniel, and then the Persian kings out here. So here's little Hosea, right? So these are all the red represents the prophets. So these are the ones that were sent to the northern kingdom. Hosea was sent right before the fall of the northern kingdom to the kingdom of Assyria, right? So he is just fit to be tied. He's been railing at the leaders, railing at the political and the religious leaders about how they completely put the entire nation at risk because of their turning away from God, right? They've set up 2 false places of worship up there. They've become very wealthy under the reign of King Jeroboam II. They pushed back boundaries, but in the midst of their wealth and their prosperity, they've turned their back on God. Throughout the book of Hosea, we see how God says, "You forgot me," right? I mean, you see this throughout the prophets, but it's just tragic because here is the final prophet that God has sent to them, and they're still ignoring him, right? They're about to fall to the kingdom of Assyria, and you see throughout the book of Hosea and many other books where they're constantly turning to these other kingdoms for protection and making alliances, and God saying, "Don't do that, don't do that. Come to me." Let me be your alliance. And they're constantly doing, relying on the flesh, right? And not seeing and not staying focused on God. And so so here they are about to fall to Assyria. This is Hosea's final chapter in chapter 14. But what we're seeing here is while he's railed and railed against them and said that all of these things, how they're going to fall. Now he's speaking hope to them, right? Because he knows they're going to fall because they're not going to turn. God knows they're going to fall because they're not going to turn. But he's also calling forth those things that be not as though they were, right? He's calling forth the future. In chapter 14, he's saying that things will turn eventually in the future, and the reason God gives them this is for the remnant, right? There's always a remnant. So he knows that they're going to go into captivity to Assyria, and he wants to give them hope. The people that are going to be going in there. So we left off with chapter 14, verse 7. We finished with that. So verses 5 through 7, I said this is a lot of the language here is very reminiscent of what you see in Song of Songs. In Solomon, he wrote Song of Songs. So there's a lot of just beautiful language. It's referring to how when things turn for Israel, he's talking about how not only the produce and the land is going to be blessed and be fruitful and multiply, but then he also goes on to address how the people themselves in the land are going to be fruitful and multiply as well, right? So now we're in verse 8. It says, "Ephraim shall say, what have I to do with any more with idols? I have heard and observed him. I am like a green cypress tree. Your fruit is found in me." So this was a tricky This was a tricky verse. The commentary went multiple different ways about this. So let me share with you, let me break this down for you. So Ephraim, of course, is the northern kingdom. So Ephraim shall say, what have I to do anymore with idols? So that's good. That's straightforward, right? So he's turning his back on the calf idols. We covered that, I think it was in chapter 13, how God was mocking them because how they were making all of these crafts, and they were like bragging about how they had such skill in these crafts, their crafting skill, and yet God was mocking them because every single one of the idols looked exactly the same. It was like an assembly line, and they were worshiping these things that were not even alive, right? It was totally stupid. So this is good. So Ephraim shall say, what have I to do any more with idols? And so then it says, I have heard and observed him. And so let me read this. It says, so this is Ephraim saying, I respond and I look on him. So they are recognizing that they have broken away from God. They're responding and they're looking on God, right? And so then it says, I am like a green cypress tree. Okay, so This is them being like, again, self-sufficient, right? So there were people that were trying to say in the commentary, there was a few people in these old scholars that were trying to say that I am like a green cypress tree was God speaking, right? And it even says that in my other Bible commentary. But most of the commentators were saying there was nowhere in the Bible that they were finding that God was comparing himself to a tree. Even when they talked about the tree of life, they're saying that this is instead the common, what they all came away with was that this was Israel again, once again, saying that, like lifting himself up. I am like a green cypress tree. So he's saying, I will have nothing to do with idols in verse 8, the beginning part. So he's turning away from the idols, which is good. I have heard and observed him. So, so they're turning away from the way they used to be, but then they say, I am like a green cypress tree. And how did they say that? It's kind of like they call it self-congratulations on Israel part. So it's kind of like they're saying, see, I can do this. And then what does God say? God says, your fruit is found in me. And so they're saying that not only is anything they do and the results of anything they do because of him, right? To not forget that, because it's because of God. But it's also a play on words, because Ephraim, another word for Ephraim is fruitfulness. So he's saying your fruit, Ephraim, fruitfulness is found in me. So it's nothing you're going to do, right? So that kind of ends it there. And then verse 9 is where I talked about in the beginning of the last video, where the entire verse 9 is like the final summation of the entire book of Hosea, which is really cool because it's totally different from the rest of Hosea. Verse 9 is just, it's like you're reading the book of Proverbs. It says, who is wise? Let him understand these things. Who is prudent? Let him know them. For the ways of the Lord are right. The righteous walk in them, but the transgressors stumble in them. So the righteous walk in what? The righteous walk in them, in the ways of the Lord, which are right. But transgressors stumble in the ways of the Lord. They can't walk in the ways of the Lord. All right, so that is the end of Hosea. All right, so I think I'm gonna start a New Testament book. I'm thinking about Titus, so we shall see. So that's all I had for you. Remember to that there's no way to the Father but through Jesus Christ. So if you've not accepted Jesus Christ as Lord, if you don't recognize or understand who he is, I encourage you to get a Bible and start reading anything that's in red. Okay, Jesus, everything in the Bible, the most Bibles, if you get like I would recommend New King James Version, but whatever you get, they usually have the words in the New Testament in red that Jesus spoke. Read them. Just begin to read the Word of God. But once you don't have to understand everything. Nobody understands everything. So all you have to do is say, Jesus, I give you my life, and you're in. You cannot lose your salvation. And then begin to research it. Just say, I don't get it. I don't understand what this is all about. But Jesus, I'm giving you a shot. Show me what it is that what you're all about. That you are God, because he is God and he's coming again. And begin to read the Word of God. Now, reading the Word of God it can be a challenge at first, but don't give up. There's no way to know God without reading his Word. Do not rely on teachers. Do not rely on other things. Those are great supplements. But even if it's just a few verses a day, get a good study Bible. That's what I'd recommend. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff online that you kids know about. That can do the same kind of thing. But just start reading the Word of God. Start with the book of John. Just read a couple chapters and do it every day. Do it every day. Do it in the morning. Just a little bit, and it will change your life, all right? You cannot know God without reading his Word. Jesus is the Word, right? He's the life. There's life and there's power in the Word of God. So that's all I had for you. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great night. Peace.